Good evening, members, officers and members of the public. If you have mobile devices on you, if you would kindly put them on silent or turn them off. And if the fire alarm goes, it's not a drill, it'll be the real thing, so please leave the building following the green and white marked exits. An example above the door over there, or there isn't one over there, so it'll be that one. And excuse my croaky voice this evening, I hope it holds out. If not, I'm afraid Councillor White, my Vice Chairman, will have to step in. This committee is being live streamed, it's also being recorded. The link to the live stream can be found on the Council's website, www.tenderingdc.gov.uk/live meetings. For the purpose of the recording, I will introduce everyone. I'm Councillor Maria Fowler, Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I will introduce the members of the committee separately. Councillor Maurice Alexander.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Jeff Bray.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor Bernard Goldman.
Evening, Chair.
Councillor Adrian Smith.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor Anne Wiggins.
Good evening, Chairman.
And Councillor John White.
Good evening, Chairman.
Thank you, members. The council officers assisting the committee this evening are from Committee Services, Officers Bethany Jones and Katie Coppenall. From Planning Services, Planning Officers Amy Lang, Matt Lang and Charlotte Cooper. Our Planning Manager, Mr. John Pateman G. Corporate Director of Planning and Community, Gary Guyver, and our Planning Solicitor, Joanne Fisher. There are no changes to the agenda running order. The application will be presented by the officer, followed by public speaking in the order of the applicant or agent, any members of the public who have already asked to speak for or against the application, a speaker from the town or parish council, and then finally the ward councillor. Members of the committee will then have a chance to question the officer, and once all the questions are answered, the committee will then debate. When all the points are discussed, finally I shall ask if we have a resolution and then call for a proposer and seconder, and the committee will then vote according to the normal rules. So, to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence, please, Bethany.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Codlin with no substitution and Councillor Sudra with Councillor Smith substituting.
Thank you, Bethany. The minutes of the last meeting, which was held on Thursday, the 19th of February, and Councillor White and Councillor Smith, of course, were not at that meeting, so for those who were, may I have a proposer that we accept these minutes? Councillor Alexander, seconded Councillor Bray. Are we all in favour that we accept these minutes? Except for Councillor Smith and Councillor White. Thank you very much, members. Item 3, declarations of interest. Councillor Wiggins.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest that I am the ward councillor for Alresford and Elmstead, and 2 of the applications on tonight's agenda, one in Alresford and one in Thorrington, are in my ward. I should be speaking for the Alresford for the application in Cockaines Lane, but I will not be speaking for the Thorrington one, and I'm not predetermined, so I should be staying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiggins. Are there any further? Councillor Scott.
Good evening, Chairman and officers and councillors. I'm declaring interest as ward councillor for item number 5, Land East of Cockaines Lane, Alresford, 25000374 outline. And also I'm declaring interest for item 6, land north of Aberset Place, Thorrington, 250149A. I'll be speaking on both applications tonight, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38. Bethany, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are no questions.
Thank you, Bethany. So the first application this evening, item 5 on the agenda, which is A1 250037-4/OUT, land east of Cockaines Lane, Alresford. And to present this application for us this evening, our officer Amy Lang. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Okay, so this application seeks outline consent for up to 100 dwellings. The application is before members as it represents a departure from the local plan, and it's also subject to a call-in from Councillor Scott. Can anybody else hear feedback? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, so the application includes the consideration of access with all other matters reserved. The proposal includes 60 age-restricted homes for older people, 30% affordable housing, 5 self-build plots, 5 first-time buyer units, and extensive public open space, landscaping, and the associated access works. This slide shows the extent of the application site area, including parts of Cockaines Lane to the south where highway works are proposed. The site comprises approximately 6.7 hectares of agricultural land enclosed by hedgerows and occasional mature trees. Some of the trees are subject to tree preservation order. Cockaines Lane runs the length of the northwestern southern boundaries of the site area. The eastern boundary adjoins an adjacent open field which fronts the B1027 main road, and the existing properties on Jefferson Way lie to the south. The site lies outside but directly adjacent to the settlement boundary of Alresford. This slide shows the relationship with the defined boundary, and it also shows the position of the protected trees to the south of the site, indicated by the green circles. The dotted red lines opposite the site, they're quite faint, hopefully you can see them, show the position of nearby public rights of way. So next up we've got a few site photos. This site photo shows a view looking south towards the application site from the adjacent field. This view is from the top end of Cockaines Lane, looking southeast across the site with the existing residential properties within Jefferson Way in the background. And this is a view from the western boundary of the site, looking southeast across the site towards the rear elevations of the dwellings in Jefferson Way again. This is a Google Street View image, which is looking west along Cockaines Lane. The application site is to the right of this image. This is also the broad location of the proposed main access and road realignment works. And I've also indicated on this image the position of one of the protected trees. This is a view from opposite the site. It's looking north towards the broad location again of the access. And again, this image shows the position of one of the protected trees. This is a view from the junction of the adjacent residential development looking west, and the application includes a proposed footpath to the southern side of Cockaines Lane, so I've just indicated the approximate position of that. And this last image is a view from the junction of Victoria Avenue, which leads to Jefferson Way, the properties that were visible in the other photos. And the proposed footpath will continue to join the existing footpath. The application is supported by several technical reports and assessments together with illustrative plans. Illustrative plans including this layout plan. As explained, the mix of dwellings will include up to 60 bungalows for over 55s, 30% affordable housing, 5 self-build plots and 5 one-bedroom dwellings for first-time buyers, all secured via the Section 1 legal agreement. As layout is a reserved matter, this layout that you see could be subject to change, and the precise location of the plots is unknown at this time and reserved for future consideration. The proposal includes approximately 2.7 hectares of open space, including a walking route and a play area. The development includes sustainable drainage features around the southern end of the site. Biodiversity enhancement areas include new planting, a meadow and orchard area. And the development amounts to approximately 15 dwellings per hectare. As I explained, layout and scale, appearance and landscaping are reserved matters. However, the illustrative layout provided demonstrates how the development could achieve an acceptable internal layout for the 100 dwellings proposed. Access forms part of the application, so the application therefore includes more detailed access drawings. This slide shows sheet 1 of the detailed access drawings, which is highlighted in the bottom corner there, so you know which part of the wider site you're looking at. The works include a new vehicular access from Cockaines Lane, the realignment of a short section of Cockaines Lane to create a one-way eastbound system, the section of Cockaines Lane between the two access egress points is to be pedestrianised. And the proposal also includes a new pedestrian footpath as indicated on the photos earlier. This is a detailed plan for that section of the site. The development also includes pedestrian and cycle connections to the adjacent footpaths. Due to the substandard junction and poor visibility onto the B1027 from the northern end of Cockaines Lane, the proposed access and realignment works reflect the solution recommended by Essex County Council Highways. The proposed works will essentially reduce vehicle movements using the Cockaines Lane and Main Road junction, and Essex Highways raised no objection subject to conditions, confirming that the access design is safe and the additional traffic can be accommodated with this arrangement. I've just put together this slide just to explain the tree and hedgerow works. Just to clarify, as there are some protected trees on the site, just so members have got that clarity regarding the works to any of those protected trees. So a single category C tree is to be removed to the eastern corner of the site, which is shown in red. And there's some minor pruning works to category B, a category B tree to the south, which is shown in green. And then the purple and the blue highlighted areas show where existing hedgerow is to be removed or trimmed, but no works or loss of other trees or protected trees are proposed, and the conditions included in the recommendation come with special construction techniques to protect the protected trees during construction. So I'm just going to come back to the layout plan and go through the merits of the case. So the site lies outside of the settlement boundary and therefore conflicts with our local plan policies SPL1 and SPL2. However, the council can only demonstrate a 3.22-year housing land supply, and because our strategic housing policies are out of date, the tilted balance under paragraph 11D of the NPPF applies. This means planning permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Therefore, the development must be assessed against the economic, social and environmental impacts of sustainable development. If approved, the development would result in the loss of 6.1 0.7 hectares of Grade 2 farmland, representing both environmental and economic harm. However, much of the district is within those categories, and given the acknowledged need for housing, it's highly likely that such agricultural land will be required for development. This cannot in itself weigh heavily against the proposal. Whilst the development would result in the loss of an expanse of open agricultural land, the illustrative site layout plan shows opportunities for substantial landscaping and the incorporation of green spaces. The proposal would extend built form into the countryside and would therefore give rise to some degree of landscape harm. The scheme is, however, designed to limit these effects through predominantly single-storey, low-density layout and the incorporation of extensive planting and green infrastructure. The application is supported by landscape and visual impact assessment and demonstrates that the development would have a moderate to slight adverse visual and landscape impact initially, reducing to negligible effects in the long term as proposed landscaping establishes. Alresford is identified within the local plan and the district's spatial strategy as a rural service centre. This reflects the range of facilities and amenities available in the village. Alresford train station is approximately 500 metres to the south, with a bus service operating along Wivenhoe Road around 200 metres further south. A new footway is proposed to connect the site to the recent housing development at Jefferson Way and beyond, creating a continuous pedestrian route to the Alresford village, where a variety of shops, takeaways, and other amenities are located. The village also benefits from a church, primary school, park, village hall, playground, all within a walkable distance of approximately 0.5 to 1 kilometre. A significant part of the scheme is the delivery of up to 60 age-restricted dwellings for over 55s. The application is accompanied by an older person's housing needs assessment, which shows there is a significant shortfall of age-exclusive and accessible housing across the district. The development therefore directly addresses an identified need consistent with local plan policy LP2 and LP10, and also Alresford neighbourhood plan policies ALRES 1 and ALRES 2. The proposal will deliver 30% affordable homes and a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bed units in accordance with our affordable housing and housing mix policies. And the proposed self-build plots will contribute toward our statutory duty. In terms of open space, ecology and biodiversity, the scheme provides substantial green infrastructure. The biodiversity net gain demonstrates just under 26 habitat gain and almost 100% hedgerow gain, significantly exceeding the 10% statutory requirement. And ecology consultees raise no objection, subject to conditions. The indicative layout demonstrates that adequate separation and screening can be achieved to avoid harmful overlooking or loss of privacy to nearby neighbours. And noise, dust and air quality impacts associated with both construction and operation can be satisfactorily mitigated through standard conditions and the detailed design at reserve matters. In terms of minerals safeguarding matters have been addressed fully in the report, and the Minerals Authority has removed its holding objection. We've received an objection from the Parish Council and around 42 public representations which raise concerns about landscape impact, highway safety, infrastructure capacity, loss of countryside and the character of Cockaines Lane. Officers have carefully considered these matters, and key points to include are highways raise no objection and safety concerns can be mitigated. The quiet lane designation does not prevent development and imposes no statutory restrictions. A full suite of infrastructure contributions will be secured via the Section 106, including the NHS, RAMS and open space management, and landscape impact is limited and can be mitigated through the proposed low-density landscape-led design. The site has archaeological potential, and Essex County Council Place Services requires trial trenching to be completed before the decision is formally issued. The recommendation is therefore subject to ECC Archaeological confirming no further objections. Additions to the recommendation are included on the update sheet. This addition has been made so that in the event of the trial trenching revealing the presence of heritage assets of archaeological interest that, in the view of Essex Place Services, do represent assets of equivalent significance to scheduled monuments, planning permission will be withheld and a revised report brought back to committee for further consideration, appropriately applying the relevant paragraphs of the NPPF and reconsidering the tilted balance if necessary. So in the planning balance, considering all of the issues that I've spoken about, although the site lies outside the settlement boundary, officers are making a recommendation of approval. When weighed against the NPPF's economic, social and environmental objectives, the benefits of this proposal are significant and the harms limited and manageable. They do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, meaning the scheme constitutes sustainable development under paragraph 11D. The proposal would deliver up to 100 homes, including 60 age-restricted units, 30% affordable, 5 first-time buyer homes and 5 self-build plots. This directly addresses local needs for special housing, affordability and housing choice. The scheme also brings wider community benefits such as economic investment during construction and occupation, 2.7 hectares of public open space, improved pedestrian and public right-of-way connections and strong biodiversity net gain. With predominantly single-storey buildings and substantial green infrastructure, the development can deliver a high-quality, well-integrated environment. While outside the development boundary, landscape impacts are contained and can be mitigated through detailed design and planting at reserved matters. All technical matters, including highways, drainage, flood risk, ecology, amenity, contamination and minerals, have been assessed and can be dealt with through conditions or obligations. And importantly, no statutory constituency currently objects to the subject to mitigation and the additional trial trenching required. So accordingly, approval is justified subject to the Section 106 securing affordable housing, healthcare and related contributions, together with RAMS and the long-term open space management and biodiversity net gain monitoring. So along with the completion of the archaeological trial trenching and the conclusions with Essex County Council Place Services that there's no harm, subject to that and any additional conditions they recommend, the application is put forward to members for an approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Before we go to speakers, Bethany.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about this. Councillor Wiggins, could I just get you to clarify your declaration of interest for this application? Are you predetermined?
Big pardon. I'm predetermined and I'm speaking against it.
Okay. Would you mind just sitting in the public gallery until you speak, and then afterwards you may need just to leave the room? Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. Okay, so we'll now go to speakers for this item. And the first speaker on the list is the representative for the applicant, Mr. William Page. Mr. Page, if you'd like to take a seat there, and there's the middle button at the bottom. As soon as you press that, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman and members, for the opportunity to address you today. This proposal has been developed over time through ongoing engagement between the applicant and officers, and I would firstly like to acknowledge the constructive and thorough work undertaken in assessing this application. The recommendation before members reflects that process, and we fully and wholeheartedly endorse their positive recommendation for approval. The proposals deliver up to 100 homes in a sustainable location on the built edge of Alresford, within close proximity to the village centre, its railway station and local services, together with 2.7 hectares of publicly accessible open space, with the majority of trees retained and significant new planting provided. The independent needs assessment identifies a shortfall of around 427 age-exclusive homes within Alresford and the surrounding area, with no such provision currently available in the village. The proposed 60 age-exclusive bungalows will make an immediate contribution towards meeting that need and help to release under-occupied family homes back onto the local market. Members will also note that the Alresford Neighbourhood Plan policy recognises that provision for older residents may appropriately come forward on land adjoining the settlement boundary where a clear need is demonstrated. The scheme will also deliver 30 affordable homes as well as self-build plots and homes for first-time buyers, ensuring it responds to local housing needs. The access strategy has been developed in close collaboration with Essex County Council and provides a clear and appropriate solution to the existing constraints at the B1027 junction to the northeast, whilst retaining the character of Cockaines Lane. The scheme delivers a safe two-way access into the development, with Cockaines Lane widened locally to 5 metres in accordance with highway authority standards. A section of Cockaines Lane will be diverted through the development and will operate on a one-way basis for vehicles leaving the site, requiring future residents to travel eastbound towards the village. This arrangement reduces new vehicle movements along the majority of the lane, whilst crucially ensuring the site remains accessible from both directions. The one-way only applies to residents leaving the site. This access arrangement has been fully reviewed and agreed by the technical officers at Essex County Council and has been supported by planning officers through the assessment of the application. A comprehensive Section 106 package has also been agreed to address the impacts of the development, and this includes contributions towards expanding GP capacity, as well as education and green infrastructure management. In planning balance terms, the proposal delivers clear social, economic and environmental benefits and can make an immediate contribution towards Tendering's housing needs. Any harms identified are significantly outweighed by those benefits, as set out in the officer's report. For those reasons, we respectfully invite members to support the officer's recommendation and grant outline planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Page. And our next speaker is Councillor Scott, ward member. Councillor Scott, if you'd like to take a seat, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors. It's been a while since I've been to the planning committee, so it's been a while. I'm speaking against this application as there would be too much for Cockaines Lane. As you can see from the photos, the lane is very narrow in parts. This lane is too narrow further down the lane, and any new development will destroy the character of this lane. I would like to know how the developer will widen the lane in parts where there are top TPO trees and original houses on the other side. The one-way system is going to be tricky in my view, and how would this be policed or monitored, especially from the B1027. If the traffic movements go via Station Road, this will add to already congested road and the issues at the junction on the B1027 and Station Road, as there have been accidents there for many times. So overall, the highway improvements will be needed and to resolve the parking problems on Cockaines Lane. This development suggests older persons to be living there on the new estate, which is welcome. Many residents of Alresford do want areas for elderly people to live. However, I believe this is too far out of the village, and the nearest bus stop is almost 1 kilometre. This would lead to then cars being used instead of walking to public transport. One question I would like to ask is, why is the site boundary included in part of Cockaines Lane, which is highways? I understand the land along there is maintained by a management company on the Hayley Wimpey site, so I'd like to know how the site boundary is going to accommodate that. ECC Adult Social Care are unable to support this application as they believe elderly persons would be out of the main village and away from the shops. North Essex Parking Partnership suggested double yellow lines. This would be looked at and at other junctions, so this is a preferred option myself to resolve the parking issues in Cockaines Lane, Pippins Way, Victoria Avenue. So I would like that. The lane is used by farming community, and they inform me they will struggle to get their farming equipment down Cockaines Lane. There is an industrial site down there with large vehicles that goes to the industrial site before the site on the other side of the road, so there'll be issues there. I do have concerns about self-builds. Perhaps this might be in the wrong location. However, I would like to see a small area elsewhere in the village for elderly people that is closer to the amenities rather than at the edge of the village. The local doctors is only open on a limited time of the day, and residents will have to travel to either Great Bentley, Witham or Brightlingsea, so car travel will be needed. Thank you for listening. Obviously, Councillor Wiggins will say her part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Now, Councillor Wiggins, if you'd like to take your seat, you also have 5 minutes.
Thank you, members, officers, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I just wanted to give some thoughts that I have had about the lane, vehicle movements, health provision, as this development is apparently aimed more at older people. Cockaines Lane is one of 2 ancient lanes in Alresford, which was mentioned in the Domesday Book and leads to Cockaines Wood Nature Reserve, which is managed by the Essex Wildlife Trust. At present, this lane is designated a quiet lane, although it carries the national speed limit of 60 miles an hour. It is a lane that is used by dog walkers, cyclists, runners and horse riders. There is no signage at present for these activities though, and it is a very narrow lane to boot. 2 developments have already been built on this lane to the north and south, with a total of 229 dwellings. If each of these has 1 car per household, this could potentially make 458 vehicle movements per day, with most of them using Station Road to get onto the B1027 Colchester Main Road. Another 100 cars for this application, and this will make 200 vehicle movements leaving the site. This makes a total of potentially 658 movements per day, overload, and not forgetting delivery lorries bringing food and parcels. Cars already park at the entrances to Pippin Way, Victoria Avenue and on Station Road. Lorries need to be able to get to the businesses located on the business park as well. The water pressure is very poor and will not get better with this development. The surgery in the village is a satellite of Brightlingsea and is only open for 3.5 hours a day, and at present there is no spare capacity according to this report. Residents of Alresford use this small surgery, Brightlingsea, Wivenhoe and the Great Bentley surgery, which is not mentioned in this report either. The sum of 58,400 from the Section 106 monies will not go very far towards providing medical practitioners or space. Surely the age demographic should require a greater contribution to be given. I understand that this outline planning application is for 100 dwellings to include specialist houses for older people, those over 55, and custom self-built homes together with amenity space, landscaping and associated works. I am confused about the term older people. As being one myself, I do not consider myself infirm. I can still work and have not reached the state retirement age yet. If these homes do go to the over 55s, then this needs to be monitored properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiggins. I'd just like to check with our officer now. Is there anything that the speakers have mentioned that you'd like to come back on?
I can come back on the red line site area just to clarify why that's included. So when it was originally submitted, it did just include the site. However, because the highway works along Cockaines Lane.
Excuse me, members. Thank you.
Yes, so the red line was extended to include that part of Cockaines Lane because the works are essential to the development and are required to form part of the application site. The queries regarding land ownership and the current properties along Cockaines Lane, a highway extent search was carried out by the applicant
and it's been clarified that all of the works that are indicated on the proposal in terms of the width of the road being widened and the new footpath can all be undertaken on highway land. Some of that looks as though it could be sort of front gardens of those existing properties, but that's not the case. It is highway land, and Highways have confirmed that that can all be undertaken as part of the agreements with them.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, so over to you, members. Questions for the officer. Councillor Bray, and then Councillor White.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. I've got quite a bit here, so I'll just do a bit and then break off, give someone else a chance if that's okay. I want to start with the situation relating to the agricultural grade of the field. It's been stated the field is grade 2. We were told yesterday it was grade 3. I was sure it was better than that. Turns out it's grade 2. And I just want to pick up on the notes that we've received this evening, the update note here, in which you say a contention under environmental dimension is that the development is unsustainable because it would lead to the loss of grade 2, very good agricultural land, all well and good so far. You then say, however, much of the district is within those categories, and given the acknowledged need for housing, it's highly likely that such agricultural land will be needed for development. Thus, this cannot in itself be weigh heavily against the proposal. It seems to me what you've said there is that the rules say that it's not sustainable. Can you please direct me to the relevant piece of legislation that says that that rule doesn't apply if you happen to be in a district with a lot of Class 2 agricultural land? Because I haven't seen that. Thank you.
Okay, so there's no specific legislation that would restrict the loss of agricultural land as such. It is just a consideration in the overall planning balance. We've noted that the loss of agricultural land, grade 2 agricultural land, would result in some kind of environmental harm. But it's about putting that environmental harm into the overall planning balance, and the loss of the agricultural land against the number of benefits that have been presented in the application. So yeah, there's no legislation that I can direct you toward. It's in terms, there's guidance that's mentioned further up in terms of how to consider the land, but yeah, it's just a part of the overall planning balance.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm maybe not being clear, but you say here that a contention under the environmental dimension is that development is unsustainable because it would lead to loss of grade 2 very good agricultural land. That contention must have come from somewhere, so there must be a rule saying that. You then go on to say that given that we have a lot of grade 2 land and we need a lot of houses, we can go ahead and use it. So what I'm saying is there's a rule there, a contention under environmental dimension that we can't, but somewhere there's an exception for us because we've got a lot of grade 2 land. Well, I've never seen that exception. Do you see what I mean? Do you see where I'm coming from with that?
So at the beginning paragraphs, it sets out that there's a glossary in the NPPF, so that's where the contention would be. It's against the glossary, the definitions, how you apply those grades, how you consider them, and then obviously the sustainable, environmental sustainable consideration in the overall balance. So yeah, it's just about, yeah, I'm going to let, do I leave that one on? Leave that one on.
All right, I'll cut in a little bit blunter. Ultimately, we have no specific policies in your local plan regarding best and most versatile agricultural land to be specifically protected against development. There's nothing like that. So our go-to is the NPPF, the current one, not the one in consultation at the moment. And under the environmental section, so the NPPF is effectively divided up into economic, social and environmental sections. Under sort of the environmental section, you're looking at section 15, paragraph 187, where the MPPF very helpfully says the words recognising the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside and the wider benefits of natural capital and economic services, including economic and other benefits of the best and most versatile agricultural land. So the MPPF recognises best and versatile land. However, it doesn't provide you anything of any help to recognise what to do with that. So therefore, ultimately, it is your judgment as decision maker what weight or lack of weight you may give to best and versatile land, and it recognises in the glossary that best and versatile land is grade 2. It's grade 3 as well, but it's grade 2. Ultimately, how that is weighted within your judgment is for the decision maker to make. Your recommendation from your officers that we don't give it much weight, given the benefits of the economic weight, the social weight of the proposal before us, and the other environmental weights that we have balanced in the planning balance. Ultimately, I think you need to debate that one further if you need to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officer for the in-depth explanation. That was, it makes it a bit more clear, but it remains the case that I'm looking at a document in front of me that says a contention under the environmental dimension is that the development is unsustainable because it would lead to grade 2 loss. And then we go on to say, but that doesn't apply to us because we've got a lot of grade 2 land. So can you just clarify for me, if we were in a district that didn't have a lot of grade 2 land, would the rules be different?
I don't think the rules will be any different, but your weighting in respect of that may be different. Ultimately, I apologise if the word contention has caused a bit of a red herring. I think rather than look at that, let's just concentrate on what are the merits of what the planning merits or lack of thereof of this case before you, and weigh up whether the agricultural value has weight or to what extent does it have weight in that planning balance.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll let somebody else have a go. I've got plenty more when they're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. We've got in front of us tonight an interesting application, but as I see it, and then I'll ask the question of the officer, as I see it, this is an outline application. It's purely to look at the exit and entrance onto the site, although we've been given a possible layout of the site. And the reason I say that is because I'm going to ask the officer just one or two questions. If I was the farmer who lived just a little bit further up the road, and I wanted to get to the village, because I've got a bit of land and various other things in the village, I understand from this rather peculiar entrance way, I could go onto the site and then come back onto Cockaynes Lane. However, my understanding from what the officer said and what we heard yesterday is that if I lived in the village and I wanted to go to see the farmer and drive to see the farmer, I couldn't do it by going up Cockaynes Lane, which I've done for years. I'd have to now go back out into Station Road and then come back down the Cockaynes Lane from the far end. So my question really is, have I understood this peculiar layout, and is it therefore restricting the rights of the villagers of Alresford to use Cockaynes Lane?
Okay, so the proposals are for allowing traffic in from the top of Cockaynes Lane and all of the existing properties along that first section of Cockaines Lane can enter and leave Cockaines Lane from that side. If you wanted to visit one of the properties along the northern stretch of Cockaines Lane, you wouldn't be able to go down Cockaines Lane to get to them. You would, as you've said, have to come out onto Station Road, go up Main Road and back in. But you can enter the new development from both sides. Is that?
So the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Thank you, John. Yeah, could I continue on that?
Yes, you may.
Chairman?
Yes, you may.
Because it does worry me. And as I said, this is an outline permission. And we have a lot of experience with Essex County Council on what they will do and what they won't do as far as highways is concerned. But it seems to me that the proposal goes to a great expense to construct this rather unusual gateway, when quite easily from the site, a second road could come from the site and join the northern part of Cockaines Lane and, shall we say, opposite the farmyard. I've had a look at the site and it's quite feasible. And if it was granted, the developer would not have to go to this rather fanciful one-way system. And it seems to me that the only way we could achieve this, or we've been told that it's Essex County Highways that have specified, and really have I got this understanding that if we were to grant this entrance and exit method, we're doing away with the rights that have existed for years. I'm not suggesting that a horse and cart, if it's mentioned in the Doomsday Book, was granted, but we are taking away the rights of the villages of Alresford.
Thank you, Councillor White. Mr. Bateman G, please. Thank you.
So just to clarify a couple of things. The first thing is this applies to vehicle or traffic. It doesn't apply to pedestrian traffic. So pedestrian traffic can go back up and down. Their rights of access are not being altered. I think I would remind members to remember the width of the lane and whether or not two-way traffic in a modern age is appropriate. And I'd go from there. But ultimately, just to go back to the point about a second access, if you're talking about the top point of the access being put in a second road at the top there, can you just point on the screen for me? Oh, can you not do laser? May I go a moment? Yep. Point of options, laser. There you go. So that one, if you're thinking of putting an access up the top there, which is halfway along that top end of the lane, you would effectively, which I think is the reason why we're dealing with such a complicated access to the south, is encourage everybody living on that estate to suddenly start using the junction that we don't want them to use in terms of going onto the main road. So to encourage people to come in from that junction is a safer option than trying to encourage 100 houses of cars going out of that junction. Hence why the system of access is being proposed in the bottom corner, more associated with the rest of the village.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman G. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. In fairness to the applicant, correct me if I'm wrong, when we were on the site visit, we were informed by one of the gentlemen that this idea was put forward by Essex County Council themselves, and they were just merely going along with that suggestion from the Highways Department. Am I right there, please?
I wouldn't be able to confirm that, I'm afraid. It could be that the applicant has engaged with Essex County Council Highways in pre-application discussions. So yeah, I can't confirm Sorry.
Okay, I would like that confirmed, if I may please, because I think this is key to this. The fact is that if you look the other end and you take it right to the top, with your explanation, Mr. Pateman G, I accept that completely, which makes me wonder the way this is laid out, is this suitable as an application for us to look at? If it is, then
if
one
I can,
moment,
okay,
do you mind if I finish?
No, okay, sorry.
If it is, then I suggest that we try to work through this and we find the answers. I'm finding this very confusing. As you know, my family of background is in farming, and I know that we don't use Fords and Majors anymore. We use massive machinery, and I am sure that someone has sold this land. Fine, that's acceptable. And there's a farm, but there are other farmers up there as well who may use that lane to move heavy machinery down. Now, if I've got this right, one of these you can't get in. It's a one-way, basically a one-way type system. Now, have I got that right?
So, in respect of the proposal in front of you, the Highways Authority have confirmed they're in agreement with it. We also have a stage 1 safety audit that came with the application as well that's been agreed. Ultimately, if the Highways Authority suggested it in the first place or the applicant suggested it in the first place, with respect doesn't mean anything. Ultimately, we are dealing with the proposal before you, and you have to deal with the merits of that proposal before you. If the Highways Authority did suggest it, then that's nice to see some proactiveness in that sense. But ultimately, that is neither here or there. In respect of farm machinery, going down this lane, I am not aware, looking at the proposal, my opinion, I appreciate that this would inherently restrict them any further than the current restrictions of a small lane that are currently in place. In only one other respect does this improve the situation, which is because of the one-way element, they are less likely to come in conflict with anything coming the other way.
Thank you. From what I can understand on the site visit, and at that point I was listening intently to this, is the fact that from the two little red rings, which indicates the ingress and the exits, that part of it will in fact be shut. The little piece in between, that will be closed. Again, have I got that right?
Yes, but only to vehicular traffic.
Yes. So, may I, Chair? Coming from the top down the lane, you go down the lane. Now, you can go one way, but you can't get back the other. Is that also correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much indeed. Right. When we were on the bus, we boarded the bus on the exit further up, and sitting inside of that farm entrance, which is a conglomerate of stuff, that was a very large piece of agricultural machinery, which obviously needs to get onto the road to move, which it's been doing for many years. The thing is, and I'm actually trying to work this out so that I can understand it. You see that, don't you, Chair? Now, I don't quite understand how a heavy piece of heavy machinery will actually navigate this narrow piece of road. Or indeed, what about the building contractors when they come in with their lorries, etc.? Is there going to be a cut-in road for them to gain access? Will everything just spiral around this one spot? In fairness, Chair, I can actually see it working, but I don't understand it. And I'm like some of the members of the committee. We don't see it in this graphic form.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try and go through a few scenarios and see if that helps, and my colleague will point out when I'm wrong. Okay, let's play a game of Let's Pretend. In terms of the buildings on the left-hand side of the screen, is that a farm? Right. Industrial estate, farm, we can call it what it is. It has big HGV vehicles that probably need to get in and out. So, if you came out and turned left, you can go up and down that road quite happily. You can come in that way, you can go out that way, no problems at all. If you come out on that area and turn right, can you please illustrate what will happen? So we go down, we follow it, and we'll follow the arrows around, keep going, and down, and out again, and back into the village that way. They won't go through the cut-off position, the cut-off piece of that lane. That's just pedestrians only. Now, if I was coming to that farm, I can't come via the village. I would only come from the top, from the main road. So, in effect, farm machinery, lorries, and what have you can go up and down that lane, except for essentially the little gatehouse bit down the bottom, which is just up one section of one way. The only reason that gateway, if you want to call it that, is one way is to stop all the residents of this new estate from piling out of the estate, double backing on themselves and getting back up to the main road that way. This just persuades them to go down through the village and come out at the appropriate station road junction, which is adequate and capable of taking that additional traffic. In other words, there is no detriment here in any way to traffic safety. There's only potential benefits. If nothing else, it's neutral, but in this case, there is actual planning benefit to altering the pattern that the roadway works in order to avoid conflict of traffic and improve safety and accommodate the additional properties being proposed. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you very much indeed. Pity we didn't have that in the beginning. That saved a bit of time. Chair, I have one thing left. May I do that, or would you prefer me to?
Carry on,
Okay,
Councillor
thank
Alexander.
Right. There's going to be some road widening, I believe. I don't know what it will involve because that's not graphic for me. Again, it's not in the agenda per se. Whether we deal with that at this level or through outline into reserve matters, what loss of trees will there be? Because I've not seen any evidence. At the site visit again, the young man very carefully told us about these two rings, and there would be no loss of trees there because of the way they're going to do it. However, here, our tree officer sort of disputes that and contradicts it. So I'm just wondering, should we deal with this now or do we deal with this at a reserve level?
Okay, so there's just one tree being removed, which is a category C tree right at the back of the site, near where the proposed substation is to be located. So that's shown in red. I've got my thing here. It's shown in red here. Right. And that's the only tree being removed.
Also, just to say that our tree officer has not objected to the scheme. He's recommended conditions but not objected.
Thank you for being patient, Chair.
Right, so we shall carry on then with Councillor Bray. You said you had some further questions.
Yeah, please don't apologise. You picked up a couple of points I wanted to, particularly on the trees. I think we've dealt with that one, so thank you. A few things that were mentioned by the speakers I want to come back to. Certainly the issue with regard to the over 55 element of the development and the sustainability thereof. I believe one of the speakers suggested that it was a 4 kilometre to the nearest bus stop. And if we're talking about over 55, like one of the speakers, I'm also over 55, but most of my bits still work. That's not the case for everybody. So I'm a little bit concerned about the sustainability strand here, in that it does seem to me there's a high likelihood that most, if not all, journeys would need to be made by private car. This one does pop up occasionally, can be an issue. Can you satisfy me that that is not necessarily the case?
I'm going to apologise. Because you mentioned the word bus stops, we were very quickly checking the measurement to the bus stop, and we just missed the question at the end. I do apologise, that wasn't good. Could you just... Are you looking for the distance to the bus stop? Because the train station's 500 metres... 500 metres? 500 metres from the site, which obviously is reasonably sustainable. The main bus stops are along the main thoroughfare of Alresford, Wivenhoe Road. Along Station Road, there is one bus stop that's not far from the lane. I'm trying to measure it, but it won't let me. I'm trying to see if there's any other bus stops at all. No, so that one is, if I can just try to measure it. Right click, measure. Oh, that's helpful. So that's 200, and then where do you start again? Because I've just done it twice. Clear, right. Right. So that's 330 metres ish, yeah. So it's about 330 metres to one of the bus stops along Station Road.
Okay, carry on, Chair. Thank you for that, much appreciated. That suggests to me that it is borderline sustainable, and only borderline, and then it comes back to waiting. Just before I go on, I just want to finish off the bit I started with right at the beginning, where you say regarding the quality of the land as in grade 2. You say this cannot in itself weigh heavily against the proposal. Can we though agree that it does weigh against the proposal at some level, depending on your perception?
I suppose the argument is that ultimately the government in its legislation and guidance is trying to encourage brownfield sites, not greenfield sites. This is a greenfield site. So there is a degree of argument to argue that every development on a greenfield site is against. Ultimately, though, this is also agricultural land. The agricultural land has a value. If this was a low-grade agricultural land, ultimately that would be better than if it isn't. They are a degree of weight, but that degree of weight is your judgment.
Okay, yeah, I definitely get that. I think as time moves on in the world, we'll probably take land more seriously, because the more of our own food we can grow, the less we have to import, and that will be important in many ways. So I probably weight it a little more than you, but that's as it should be. That's not a problem. So the issue with sustainability, I think you've given me the distance to the bus stop, so it's borderline within a sustainability strand, I would suggest. Loss of character was a big one. We went and visited this site, and it must be said, it's a lovely area. It really is a lovely area. It's quiet, it's peaceful, there's birds singing and all of the like. So character. Let's talk about character a little bit. If we take something like this, which is extremely rural, and stick 100 houses on it, is it fair to say that that is going to change its character quite substantially?
Yes.
Okay, we're agreed on that one. And one more thing I just wanted to pick up, if I can please, Chair, is one of the speakers mentioned that this particular area appears in the Domesday Book, and not everything does. I'm a bit of a historian, so I know that. Quite a lot doesn't. Is there, or are we aware of any heritage standing of this particular area? And I say that mindful of the fact that we're keen on an archaeological study, which suggests there's history there, because they don't usually do them if there isn't, or not at the same level. So I'm interested in that. And there was one more thing I wanted to do, but I'll do that in a moment. Can we deal with that? Thank you.
So in terms of other historic, we don't have any nearby listed buildings. We've got no other references of historical matters to raise beyond the archaeological matters that we've already covered. So the answer to that question is we're not aware of anything that we should be making you aware of. Can I just grab you while I've got you for a second on the other point of sustainability? I think I should just note that this is an allocated site within your emerging local plan. Out for consultation. Obviously that's not adopted and that has very limited weight as well, but of course that process would have gone through a sustainable study as well.
You may, Councillor Bray, and then we will go into debate.
Thank you very much. Yeah, okay, no, thank you for that. I think, yeah, your point on the sustainability there, it's an emerging local plan, limited weight from it, and also just because something in the local plan doesn't actually demonstrate its sustainability, does it? So that's yet to be tested. But the last one is the requirement for a biodiversity gain. Now, we're saying on this site that we're striving to achieve a 10% increase in biodiversity over a 30-year period. I know I've read that. Can somebody explain to me how we take an empty field full of wildlife, stick a load of houses on it and increase its biodiversity by 10%? Because I'm struggling with that concept.
Do you know what? There's a couple of things in planning that I think it's always very difficult to explain in a very short amount of time. Biodiversity increase is one of them, and also when it comes to sustainable urban drainage, when you explain to people that a field is of a certain discharge rate for flooding and you put a load of houses on there but you build it correctly, it can actually decrease the flow of water coming off that field. People don't believe you. But ultimately, if you design it right, it can. In a way, this biodiversity, though, is slightly different in the context that what you've got is a farm field. It has been evaluated. It's given there's a very, I'm not an ecologist, so at this point, I bow my head and say there is a point system, there's a matrix that they will go through in order to evaluate the current ecology value. They give it a value. It's a very complicated process and it is designed by government as well. So ultimately, and ecologists and so on. So they're all involved in that. It's not by the whim of the applicant by any means. So they go through that process and you have a value. Now, once you've got a value, you can then work out what your net 10% will be. So it's very bespoke to every site because, of course, what value one site might have and what you have to do. So what do you have to do to increase biodiversity? Well, yes, you can plant a lot of trees and wild meadows and everything like that. You can also add boxes for birds, bee, bats, you name it. You know, there is a whole load of other things that you can do that increases that, and that is what is being secured. So it's those modification and enhancements that will be secured for that 30-year period to give us that on-site 10% for that duration. That is conditioned, that is monitored, and that is enforced by your planning team as necessary.
And thank you for that. I mean, that was a really good attempt at trying to explain to me how concreting and bricking something will improve its biodiversity. You may not be surprised, I'm not wholly convinced, but I'll take it on board. Very lastly, Chairman, if I can, there is a mention here that formal approval won't be put forward until an archaeological appraisal has taken place. I'm going to be picky here. We are the decision maker. This committee is making the decision. Why are we being asked to make a decision ahead of that, given that it won't then come back to us? So we will have made the decision, our names are on it, but actually the final decision won't be ours. I'm uncomfortable with that.
I can give you an answer. Ultimately, archaeological works is extraordinarily expensive. And if you were to refuse it on other grounds, if you were looking to say the principle of development in all other respects is a no-go, that is what we're trying to get from you at this point, so that they have the comfort to know that that is the issue they need to sort out, and they have comfort in terms of that expense. It's not unreasonable. It is also not unusual in planning for this process to go forward on that basis. The fact is, this is an outline application, so all those other matters are reserved anyway. You also have the other type of planning application, which is planning in principle, where you wouldn't have half of the information you had before you, and unfortunately we still have to deal with that type of application. But in this case, it is not, we don't see that to be fundamental in its principle. It's a technical issue of, is there a matter there or not? And quite simply, if there is, we'll be coming straight back to you.
Can I just confirm that last line you said there, if there is, we'll be coming straight back to you? Does that mean it will come back to us if there is an issue?
If there, yeah, that's yes. Sorry, you got me just double thinking. Yes, that's the point. Yes.
Excellent. I'm done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Are there any further questions? If not, we are now in debate. Councillor Goldman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've just got one question, which is to do with Cockaynes Lane and the fact that it's being shut off at one end by making it one way. Yeah, and then once the buildings, if it gets approved, if the buildings go ahead and get built, on average, 2.3 cars per household, give or take? Call it 2. Has there been a feasibility study, because all the traffic will now be being thrown through the village, because you won't be able to get out through the other end of Cockaynes Lane, because it'll be one way. You can come in one way, come out one way. Has there been a feasibility study done by Highways at all on the impact of the impact on the village itself with the amount of traffic coming through it? Thank you.
So yes, in short, the application is supported by all the necessary technical documents and assessments in terms of traffic flow, traffic movements, the amount of traffic. That's included with the application, and that's formed part of the Essex Highways assessment when they've looked at the application as well. And they've deemed, as we've explained, the road realignment and the potential for the Station Road junction to accommodate that additional traffic is as acceptable, and that's why they raise no objection.
Thank you.
Anything further, members? Thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. There's something that's just popped up. I remember reading it a few days ago, but I just remembered it, if I may, please. Under the representations, the local representations, this is on page 29, top page of that, someone or something has stated that the lane is far too narrow for increased traffic and the development. What we've seen existing conflicts between cars, pedestrians and cyclists. Now, we've not even mentioned cyclists yet. Has provision been made for footpaths, etc., to allow people who choose to walk, because not everyone has a car, who choose to walk, and are we satisfied that this all conforms to our standards and the local plan?
I'll just point out a few things on the illustrative layout plan that's on the slide in front of you. So as we know, layout is a reserved matter, so this isn't definite. However, this does indicate some connectivity points. So you've got pedestrian and cycle points being added to allow a better connection to the public rights of way that are near the site. And within the site, there will be a walking route as well. And this section here, although it's closed to vehicular traffic, pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders will all still be able to use this section.
Thank you, Chair.
So, I'm looking for a proposal, members. Well, we've all seemed to have gone very quiet with the debate, so in that case then, if we're not debating, we'll have a proposal. Councillor Smith. Well, while we're having a think, I'll try and talk a little bit more, even though you can probably hear that my voice is going a bit. But I was in two minds about the road layout until we were on the site yesterday, and that's another example that proves how important it is for the planning committee to visit the sites and to see these layouts for ourselves. And it was only looking at it, I believe we had the two gentlemen from the applicant, the agent with us to point out the points of where the road would be, and it hadn't dropped. The penny hadn't dropped with me until that point. And then I looked again later on, and I thought, yeah, I see it now. I get it now. I didn't up until that point, but being there on the site then gives you an idea with the width of that road. And living in a narrow road where I understand that, I get that, because where you've got large vehicles trying to pass each other, I understand that. So that's when it dropped with me. I understood what this was all about. So when we've finished debating, I will be happy to second Councillor Smith's proposal to accept the approval of this application. Councillor Bray.
I thought I'd put my hand up and rescue you because I hear your voice was gently disappearing there. So, firstly, on the road situation, it's been discussed by several members. I do get that. I understand that. I see how that's working. I can see some logic to it. I can't say I'm absolutely over the moon about it. I'm a long way from there, but I get that. It's not really my primary issue. I am struggling to get past this idea that in general terms, grade 2 land will be considered unsustainable, but because we're tendering it isn't. Don't like rules that apply to sort of some places, not others. And I appreciate what you're saying, it's not a hard and fast rule and blah, blah. I get that, but I'm just uncomfortable with that. And it is a question of weighting. It cannot in itself weigh heavily against, but in my mind it does weigh against. Without any question, I give that some weight. I am also concerned about the sustainability strand. I do believe, whatever anybody tells me, that what will happen there is that 90% plus of journeys will be taken in a private car, and that fails the sustainability strand, so I don't like that. The character, as I said earlier on, this is it's a lovely place, it's a beautiful place, and we seem to have less and less of them. This place produces food for us. It's lovely. It's a beautiful place to go to, and once it's gone, it's gone. Once you put a concrete on there, it's concrete forever. And I just think it's too big a loss. Coming into planning terms, which of course we have to do, it's difficult to find the planning reasons to say why it shouldn't be built, and I can see that it's difficult to do that. But we just cannot go on throwing away beautiful parts of our country in this way. There are lots of places we can build houses, there are, and very few of them will look as stunning, be as nice. Not so many of them will be grade 2 agricultural land, and not so many of them will have the same sustainability issues that I think this one will have. That's my weighting. For that reason, Chair, for those reasons, I'm very happy, by the way, that we get it, that it comes back to us after the archaeological. I'm very, very pleased about that. That's good. I think it should. We are the decision maker. This is where it should be. So, for that reason, Chair, I'm not going to be able to support this application. That's where I sit at the moment. I understand planning issues and the millions of explanations. The problem for me in some ways is that we've needed to have so much explanation as to why it's okay. Generally, when you have to go into so much detail to tell you that something's okay, my instinct is it probably isn't. That may just be me, but that's where I'm at. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I've got myself confused. Are we in debate or
yes, we are in debate,
Jolly
Councillor
good.
Alexander.
Okay. Because we're on outline, and outline to me is always very difficult anyway. You're only focusing and targeting a certain thing. You're not hitting the whole programme. It is so much easier if you're going to move with your thoughts, Councillor Bray, that we had the whole thing before us, then we could actually see it as a more living, working thing, and we could then put ideas onto conceptions. To that end, I know you're reticent to second this. I'd like to see this come back to us reluctantly, because as I said, I'm on the edge here. I really am. I'd like to see it come back to us in reserve, because what I want to do is to be able to see the bigger picture, because we need to be fair to everyone, to the people who live there, to the applicant, and to the people who will eventually, of course, live there. We don't want to give permission for a nightmare to develop, and that's it. So, with your permission, I will second this and look forward to it coming back to us, and so we can debate that thoroughly.
Well, I had already seconded the proposal, but I mean, I'm happy if you're insisting to withdraw my seconding of Councillor Smith's proposal. If you're insistent.
Oh, well, yes, I am.
Of course. Any further comments on this application? And I do agree with you, Councillor Alexander, that I would certainly like to see the reserve matters come back to the Planning Committee for this, if we are minded to approve it. Definitely. So, that being the case, I believe we should go to the vote. So the proposal from Councillor Smith, as per the conditions in our papers and the update sheet as well, it's important that we include that we approve this application, and it was seconded by Councillor Alexander. So we go to the vote to approve this application. May I see a show of hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? 1, 2. Abstentions? So this application is approved, and we will now have a break for about 10 minutes, and we will be back with item 6. Thank you, Katie. Welcome back to Tendring District Council's Planning Committee on Tuesday 17th of March. And we will now continue with item 6 on the agenda, which is A2 25/1498/4, land to the north of Avocet Place, Thorrington. And to present this application for us, our officer, Mr. Matt Lane. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Okay, so this application's for the erection of 60 single-storey dwellings for those aged 55 and over, as well as those with or supporting someone with a disability. The application site is located at the western end of Thorrington Village. It's an area of land approximately 4.2 hectares in size, located to the north of Avocet Place, which represented 2 previous phases by the same developer that's proposing this application. There's housing along Station Road to the west of the site, and to the north runs a public right-of-way. The remainder of Thorrington Village is located to the east. So that's the aerial view of the site. As I say, it's in agricultural use, or it previously was, and you can see there it's surrounded on mainly 3 sides by existing residential development. This is the site in relation to the existing local plan proposals map. As you can see, it's directly adjacent to the settlement development boundary of Thorrington. But again, it is a site that is proposed to be allocated for housing within the preferred options draft of the local plan. And again, that's for 60 units, that allocation. So it's consistent with what's before you this evening. So these are views of the site and the access points that we saw yesterday. You can see that there's existing access points into the site at both ends of the existing bungalows. Views across the application site looking north. So you can see in the distance there's some static caravans and some structures that will be removed as part of this application. But the land's generally flat and was previously in agricultural use. Views of the northern boundary, so you can see those structures in a bit more closer detail there. And you can see that the boundary with the northern properties that back onto the site is demarked by a low-level hedge. These are views of the rear of the properties along Station Road, so looking west. You can see that the boundary in that location is marked by patches of vegetation and some fencing, so the vegetation all along that boundary will be retained. The southern boundary of the site, there's some trees along that boundary. They're all to be retained as well and strengthened where necessary by landscaping. And views south and east back towards Avocet Place. So you can see the rear of those bungalows are marked by a 1.8 metre fence that is located on that boundary. So this is a full application. So what you're seeing is what is proposed. There's no outline or reserve matters to consider in this application. So the layout before you can see there'll be a spine road, vehicular access that presents in a loop formation that will access at the western end and then loop back round to the eastern end of Avocet Place. Areas of public open space at the entrance into the development. You've got a SUDS detention basin over at the eastern side of the site, and you've got links through the development that link through to the public open space to the north alongside the public right-of-way. You can see there that the sites or the units that are proposed for affordable housing purposes are marked in red there with a red dot. So there's 18 in total, and that represents 30%. The overall mix is 6 1-bed, 26 2-bed and 28 3-bed units. So this is the proposed access and movement plan. So you can see the blue route is the primary vehicular access, and then you have secondary vehicular routes and shared private drives coming off of that. And you can see the pedestrian links through the site to the public right-of-way at the north. Materials plans, there's a variety of materials used across the development. It's largely consistent with the bungalows that we saw on site yesterday. The same developer, so they're the same style properties. And you've got a mixture of materials. You've got pan tiles in dark grey, rustic colours. You've got areas of render, light render, and you've got red brick and buff brick. So there's a good variety throughout the development that provides sort of visual enhancements. So some sample elevations. So you've got some 3-bed units here. So you can see that they're traditional hipped roof form, bay windows, brick plinths, detailing above and below the windows to provide added interest. And again, you've got a mixture there of red brick and render. The 2-bedroom units, again, traditional simple form. areas of canopies above the doors, the entrance doors, to provide added interest. And again, you've got red roof tiles, grey roof tiles, buff brick and render to provide a bit of variety. And the 1 and 2 bed units, which are largely the affordable units, again, traditional form, grey roof tiles with buff brick on the exterior. Garages, they're all to dimensions that's compliant with the Essex parking standards, so 7.4 by 6.6 the double garages and 7.4 by 3.4 internal for the single garages. So there you can see some street scenes. Again, you can see the variety of materials. You can see at the front of the properties there'll be areas of ornamental hedgerow planting, and there's good spacing in between the properties to provide a spacious development. Parking strategy, so each property is provided with at least 2 parking spaces. Across the site there's 15 visitor spaces, which is all compliant with the Essex parking standards. There's also provision for cycle parking, secure cycle parking within sheds and integral garages across the site as well. The public and private spaces, you can see in the light green there, the private amenity spaces. They range from 69 square metres to, I believe it's 360 square metres. So all compliant with what our policies require and usable spaces for future residents. The open space areas are located at the southern end, the eastern end and through the middle of the site, and they'll be managed by a management company. So we haven't got precise landscape details at present, but this shows a good view of how the landscaping design will be achieved. There'll be additional planting along the southern boundary. There'll be a green link that runs through the development from the southern end to the northern public right-of-way. The Suds Basin will be supplemented by additional tree planting, and there'll be specimen tree planting at key focal points throughout the development. To the front of the bungalows, there'll be ornamental hedgerow planting and shrub planting. So in terms of existing trees, I said the area of the main area of the site is devoid of any real vegetation, but areas around the edge of the site do contain trees and hedgerows. They're all being retained, aside from a small area in that top left-hand image you can see there that's marked in red where my pointer is, which is to accommodate a garage. That's a small low-level hedge that's being removed to accommodate that garage. And the drainage strategy, as I said, there's an attenuation basin over at the eastern end of the site. So water will be directed towards that basin, and then that will lead off towards the Anglian Water main sewer. And that will hold the water for a good period of time in times of stormy weather. So turning to the merits of the scheme, if I just go back to the proposed layout. So as I stated at the outset, the site lies outside the Forrington Settlement Development boundary, and the proposal therefore represents a departure from the adopted local plan. However, as you've heard already tonight, the Council can only currently demonstrate a 3.22 year housing supply, meaning the most important strategic housing policies in the current local plan are considered to be out of date. As a result, the tilted balance in paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged, which dictates that planning permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. As I said, it's also relevant to note the site is identified within the Council's local plan preferred options draft as a potential housing allocation, and while this emerging document is still at an early stage and carries only limited weight at present, it does nonetheless indicate that this location has been considered as part of the Council's emerging settlement hierarchy and future growth strategy. Turning to the benefits, the development provides specialist bungalows for older residents and for those with a disability or those supporting someone with a disability, and this is a recognised and growing need within the district as set out in the Council's strategic market housing assessment. The scheme also includes 18 affordable homes, which represents 30%, and some wheelchair compliant units as well, which is a recognised need. This type of accommodation helps also free up under-occupied homes elsewhere and provides clear and genuine social benefit, which attracts significant weight in the planning balance. Also, the site is located directly adjacent to the existing village edge and settlement development boundary, and benefits from safe pedestrian access to local facilities within the village and to bus services that run along Clacton Road. Importantly, the scheme also delivers 2 new bus stops onto Clacton Road, improving public transport for both new and existing residents at this end of the Forrington village. All units are single storey with good spacing, usable sized private gardens and well distributed networks of open space. The layout and design reflect the character of the early phases to the south and of the surrounding village, with landscaping including tree planting and hedgerow retention, helping to soften the built form and allow the development to integrate effectively within its setting. Technical consultees raised no objections. Highway confirmed that the site access and local capacity are acceptable. Drainage has been fully assessed and meets SUD requirements. And ecology advisors and Natural England confirmed that ecological impacts, which are supported by comprehensive habitat and protected species surveys, standard mitigation measures and secured biodiversity enhancements can be suitably mitigated, with the scheme delivering over 10% biodiversity net gain. Objections from the parish council and residents focus on the scale of development, traffic, drainage, landscape impacts, affordable housing arrangements and construction disturbance. These points have been fully considered. Highways, drainage and ecology consultees all confirm that impacts are acceptable and can be safely mitigated. Visual and landscape effects are judged to be limited and largely localised, and the single-storey built form significantly reduces any potential impact on neighbours in terms of amenity issues. A construction management plan secured via condition will control construction phase issues, and the proposed density is consistent with surrounding phases. In addition, the Section 106 agreement will secure the delivery of 30 affordable housing units on the site, supported by a cascade approach. This will require the units to be offered in the first instance to people over 55 and to individuals with a disability or those caring for someone with a disability. If there's no demand within these priority groups, the homes can then be released more widely in accordance with the agreed cascade process. So overall, when taking the economic, social and environmental objections of the NPPF together, the substantial benefits of the proposal clearly outweigh the relatively limited identified harm, namely that the site lies outside the current settlement development boundary for the village and would result in modest localised landscape impact. Importantly, the scheme would make a meaningful contribution toward reducing the district's housing supply deficit, adding to the weight in favour of the approval. Furthermore, while carrying limited weight at this stage, the site's identification within the emerging local plan reinforces this as a logical, sustainable and anticipated location for future housing growth. Officers therefore conclude the adverse impacts do not significantly demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Accordingly, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to the conditions listed within the report, and the completion of a Section 106 agreement securing 30% affordable housing, NHS contribution, the RAMS contribution, 2 new bus stops onto Clacton Road, biodiversity net gain and monitoring, public open space implementation and maintenance, and the occupation restrictions I've already mentioned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. We have 2 speakers. The first one is Mr. Martin Scott, the applicant. Mr. Scott, if you'd like to take a seat, and when you're ready is the button in the middle, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, Chair, councillors and officers. Thanks for the opportunity to present our scheme tonight. Our proposal represents the final phase of our development to be built by a sister company, Scott Residential, for 60 bungalows with an age restriction, all to be built to M42 accessible standard, and as you've heard, there's 4 units also to be to wheelchair standard. We'd also be expecting to achieve gold standard on secured by design, as we've achieved on all our recent schemes. The details of the scheme have been comprehensively covered by the officer's report, so I thought it may prove useful to address the comments raised by the parish council. First one was regarding density. The council was concerned that phase 3 is at a higher density. It actually is at a slightly lower density than phases 1 and 2, at about 6 dwellings per acre, 15 dwellings per hectare. Age restriction, this has been varied with each phase, but that's really just been to reflect national and local policies. Access, there was a query on that. Phase 3 we used the same access as phase 1 and 2 straight onto the Clacton Road. There's concern about the garden sizes, whether they exceed the minimum. So I'm pleased to tell you that they are, on average, they're more than double the stated minimum. Actually averages out 140% above the minimum standard. The affordable housing, as you've heard, will be dealt with under the Section 106 agreement, regarding the age restrictions and allocations. I think the parish were also concerned about construction impacts, but this would be dealt with through construction management plan, which will address these should permission be granted. In terms, we've heard about a small section of hedgerow being removed. There's actually 190 metres of new hedgerow going in around the site, and we'll also be planting 105 new trees as part of our proposal. In terms of biodiversity net gain, which I appreciate is a complicated subject, we'll be providing hedgehog fencing and homes, bat and bird boxes, creating habitats to encourage wildlife. This will all feature in our ecological mitigation plan, in addition to achieving a 10% biodiversity net gain on the site. And just to clarify, sorry for the gentleman's comments earlier, the biodiversity net gain really comes around from quality of habitat that we can create around the site. It is a strange matrix, but that's where we have to concentrate our efforts on the very best of habitat. There was a query about bus shelters and obviously
3 minutes, Mr. Scott.
Sorry, have I
3
done?
minutes.
Have I done?
Yeah.
Sorry. Apologies.
And our next speaker is the ward councillor, Councillor Scott. Councillor Scott, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Another Scott, but no relation. Ward councillor for Thorrington. I'm not speaking for or against the application. I'm just relaying some comments that residents from Averset Place have contacted me over the many months about what they would like to see on the next phase. The site proposed for 60 dwellings, local residents feel it should be lower than the amount proposed, maybe between 40 and 45 dwellings. There is concern from residents with reference to the volume of traffic movements per day out of Averset Place onto the B1027 if the application is approved, and accessing Thorrington Cross. Thorrington Cross has problems of congestion where traffic is being backed up in all directions. The site could have anything up to 240 vehicle movements per day. This does not include delivery drivers, visitors and medical care workers. The figures from ECC I do not think are realistic on page 75. I'm also concerned that ECC school service have no comment. However, there will be no children living on here, but how do we know this? Will this be monitored? I note that the comments from NHS saying that the development will impact local GP practices, while the previous application could accommodate extra practice places, even though both applications share the same GP surgeries of Wivenhoe, Brightonsea and Great Bentley. This application is very close to the mineral extraction proposals, and if both are to go ahead, what will be the impact on the road, especially on the B1027 affecting that road, Thorrington Cross? Thorrington residents usually use their cars to travel out of the village, as the current bus stops are a fair distance away to travel to Brightonsea and Clacton. The proposed new bus stops I welcome and the upgrades. Will this also account for new bus stops possibly going in on Station Road to accommodate the new service from Brightonsea to Clacton going via Thorrington, Great Bentley round? Because there is a new bus service going up to Great Bentley via Station Road, and I think it'd be nice if there was bus stops along there. Residents have also have informed me they are concerned with the cluster of affordable housing. As you can see where the red dots are, that it's clustering in one area. They are suggesting whether the proposed affordable housing could be scattered across the proposed site with a mixture of private and affordable housing along the site and not in one area. The report suggests that dwellings will be offered to over 55. However, it also says that houses can be offered to those under 55. Then the report says there will be no Section 1/6 money for education. And I'm suggesting possibly if there is if the age group goes below 55 or younger, then in my view there should have some education provision of Section 106. And they're my comments as ward councillor on behalf of residents who live in Averset Place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Matt, is there anything that you'd like to come back on to, which were mentioned by the speakers? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just come back on a few points. I think in terms of the bus stop issue, Highways have asked for those onto Clacton Road to serve the main road through Forrington. I think there's some bus stops further east, but they're about 400 metres away. So the new bus stops will be at the front on Clacton Road rather than Station Road because there's better connectivity to Clacton Road as well. In terms of education, as I've said, the proposal is for those over 55 or those with a disability. There may be some children living on the site. It's not out of the realms of possibility. But in terms of the level of units that accommodate children, it's unlikely to attract an education contribution. In terms of the affordable housing cluster, there is a cluster centrally, but there's a further two to the north, and it's not considered that the layout or the affordable housing units are considerably different in terms of their design or layout, and that's considered to be an acceptable layout to officers. Yeah, that's all I need to come back on at the moment.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, members, over to you. Questions, and Councillor Bray and then Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. First thing to clarify, I think you said to me the land class here is class 3, is that correct?
I have proof. Yeah, so in terms of the classification, you can see from the slide there that, yeah, the blue and the star in the middle, yeah, it shows it as grade 3 agricultural land.
Councillor Bray.
Sorry, I'll do that again. Probably not word for word. The spread of affordable housing. If I remember rightly, we used to have a system where we didn't put more than 10 affordable housing together. Is there any reason, and I do remember that very clearly actually, is there a reason why the affordable housing has to be as clustered as that, or could the applicant maybe alter it a little bit? We did used to have 10, I'm certain of that.
There is, there's a couple of principles that have, over the years. The debate here is, ideally, you want to have affordable housing scattered within a development. Ideally, you also have the other concept, which would be the case here, that you can't recognise an affordable house compared to a market house. And you wouldn't in this case. There are two separate ones of affordable housing to the north of the plan, as well as obviously the gathering in the middle there. I think it comes down to a judgment of what is a good design and layout. If it looks like that you have socially isolated an affordable housing section off to the side where you don't want to go, then you can understand how that might be perceived as a poor place design. Whereas in this case, there is an argument to say they are actually centre and up front at the heart of the development, very much part of a free-through, a thoroughfare in terms of pedestrian thoroughfare. They're not being hidden away. The other balance here is we have to get to the situation where we have a housing association take them on board. Now, the problem with housing associations, they haven't read the planner's guide to how to design a housing estate. They like to have houses together because they like to take on board the land, and they also like to take on board the land at one go, as opposed to lots of stages as the developer is building their way through. So we're in that kind of debate of how do we make sure that a housing association is willing to take these on board, and this is a good offer to them and an easy offer for them to say, oh, that's a nice cluster there, we can take that, we can take the land with it, and we can make sure we maintain that and keep it together as one shop, go, as opposed to, oh, hang on, we've got to wait another year or two before we get that one over there, and then another year or two before we get to that one over there. So unfortunately, there is a balance between the desire to spread development types across the estate versus timings and the offers for housing associations and their funding rounds and everything else. So there's a complicated answer, but ultimately, the real question is, do we consider that this clustering in this context would be harmful? We've come down on the side that it wouldn't be, but of course that is your judgment for your debate if necessary.
Thank you for that. The explanation's clear, and I understand that, and I do like the overall layout, which I think is very good given the size of the site. So I would have liked to see the affordable more spread, but I understand and accept what you're saying, and I agree it isn't sufficient harm for you to say, well, we're not having any of those then. Perfectly okay with that. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm done for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chairman. I like this site, but in view of what we've been told by Councillor Scott, that there is a new bus route that's set up now along the, I can't see with my glasses, Station Road, I think it is. Is there a footpath that can go from this estate into Station Road? It would seem that if people want to use that route, they've got to go right out to the main road and then walk round the corner to get on that route. It would seem that I can see from this block plan it may be a job to get through, but it is the obvious improvement that could be done on this otherwise good site. Thank you.
Yes, so there is a public right-of-way at the northern end of the site, so you can see that dotted pink line at the north. So this development will lead through to that public right-of-way and provide a pedestrian access onto that public right-of-way and then Station Road. So there is a link through. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt. Any further questions for our officer? If not, we shall go into debate. Councillor Bray.
Thanks, Chair. I like this development. It's well thought out. It looks very good to me. I'm very happy to propose approval for this one. It's right, it's proper. I would say in future we did used to have a rule of 10 on affordable. So for future, I appreciate what you're saying. I understand the issues with housing associations, etc. But it does take away that, you know, they're over there and they're over there kind of thing, which nobody wants. But given you've assured us that the houses are indistinguishable, it's less of an issue. Happy to propose approval, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that. It's good application. See nothing wrong with it, with the exception of the block of affordable housing. But as it's been so adequately explained to us, it's all going to work out okay. And in my officers do I trust.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Well, having sat on this committee now for 11 years, we have raised that I know on numerous occasions about don't like the word, but the segregation of affordable housing, which, given the explanation that Mr. Pateman G has given us about the way that housing associations treat the properties, yes, you know, you can kind of understand that. So, and I'm certainly going to be supporting approval for this. So, are there any further comments on this? No? Councillor White?
Just a query on the age. Will the age rules still apply to the affordable houses?
Yes. Yes, they will. Yeah, that would be part of the Section 106 agreement. Yep.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. The proposal, which is in our papers, there's nothing on the update sheet on this one, from Councillor Bray and seconded by Councillor Alexander to approve this application. May I have a show of hands, please, members, for approval? And that is unanimous. Thank you. we'll go straight to the next item on the agenda, which is item 7, which is one that's come back to us from last month. Now, Councillor Smith and Councillor White are not taking part in this application, but I have no objection. If you wish to sit, you're going to leave. Okay, that's fine. So the next application is A325/869/full 54 Connaught Avenue, and again our officer Charlotte Cooper will present this one for us. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So this application is for a change of use from Class E to hot food takeaway. The application is before members of the committee as it was called in by Councillor Davis and was deferred from our previous planning committee to allow for further consultation with the town council and obtain additional information with regards to the parking. If I could make you aware of the update sheet, which contains updates relating to amendments to the heritage assessment, an updated drawing showing the parking and bin store arrangements, and an amendment to the wording of condition 3. So the site is located on Connaught Avenue within Frinton High Street, and it is within the settlement development boundary of Frinton-on-Sea. The site fronts Frinton High Street with the vehicle access to the back and parking arrangements, which is accessed via Harold Way. This is the aerial image of the site. So the site photos show the location of the site amongst other commercial properties on the High Street. As we can see, the site is currently vacant and it has been so for a number of years. And then this shows the vehicle access and parking space to the rear of the site. So the red shaded area on this proposed floor plan shows a seating area for up to 11 covers, meaning the site will be able to accommodate for people who wish to dine in and therefore retain some of the existing restaurant element. There are no external changes other than the bin and cycle stores to the rear. As stated, the parking provision is located to the rear of the site, access via Harold Way. The plan shows 2 parking spaces and e-bike and scooter parking. Essex Highways have confirmed the bays meet the required dimensions, with the additional evidence submitted confirming the wider area has adequate on-street capacity, particularly outside of peak trading hours, and the Highway Authority have raised no objection to this application and is therefore deemed acceptable in terms of highway safety, and therefore the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Charlotte. So following on from last month, of course, we deferred this application so that we could let the town council have a little bit more time with the consultation. And if you will see in your papers, there's I think two pages or more there from Frinton Walton Town Council. And even though unusually we don't go back for a second site visit, as it was raised by one of the members of the committee that we should go back and have a second look at the rear of the property, we did. So no speakers, so straight into questions. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to thank the Chair and the officers for giving us the opportunity to do this, for it certainly changed the whole perspective of this. We must exercise due diligence when we go on site visits to ensure that we respectfully ask to visit the park. We could have done that and saved ourselves a bit of time, but we didn't. But it was put right, and I thank you again. There is no questions, because there's no questions to ask in my mind. And when you're ready, Chair, only when you're ready, I wish to propose that we accept this. Now, I think the applicant has waited long enough. Proposal Sorry, go for it.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Goldman.
Yeah, I'm happy to second this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Anything else anybody else wants to raise on this one, Councillor Bray?
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair, I'll be really quick. I think I stand by the committee's decision to defer this. I think it was the right thing to do. We've now equipped with all of the information. I'm inclined to agree with two previous speakers. So let's go to the vote. Thank you, Chair.
So we have a proposal from Councillor Alexander, seconded by Councillor Goldman, as per the conditions in our papers, and there was nothing on the update sheet. Was it? Sorry, was there? Was there anything on the update sheet? I can't remember now. Been a long night. Yeah. Yeah, there was something on the update sheet. Yeah, it's condition number 3 that was amended. So, including what was on the update sheet. So, we are voting to approve this application. So, may I have a show of hands, please, members? And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Against? And abstentions, none. So that's unanimous. I had to check there for a minute. I know it's Councillor White being here that fooled me. Right, thank you all very much. And so we'll close this meeting. That just leaves me to tell you that the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 14th of April, 2026. And good night to those of you out there in internet land.